Hi, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live premiere, appreciate it. Today we have quite a few things to get through, ranging from James Brenner, the debates around was he squatting near the Grangeshed property or not. Also looking at recent GoFundMes, how they've turned out, as well the money raised recently on June the 10th when Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds went down to Idaho Falls for that barbecue cook-off to raise money, and the proceeds going towards the volunteer groups, the K9 unit, etc., which has helped search for Dylan Rounds and other people in the background. As well, we can look at a bit of a psychological aspect and another, I don't know if you'd call it prediction, more of an observation, and it kind of applies to Jim Terry with the recent discussions going on there. And as well, we also need to talk a brief little update about the weather too in Lucin, Utah and nearby, such as Montello, Nevada. So there is a lot to get through today, but the video will be controlled and it shouldn't be too dragged out, so you don't need to worry about that. Of course, as we do go along, feel free to share your thoughts, opinions, reactions in the live chat on the right-hand side, and you can talk about a few other bits and bobs in between, okay? Now, if you haven't already, make sure to check my previous video out, as there was more breaking news in recent time, and it definitely does concern the search for Dylan Rounds, i.e. delays potentially, as well as remains being unearthed, uncovered, or maybe moved away. And you might be thinking, what are you talking about? As said, be sure to check my previous video out. A link will be down below in the pinned comments section, and you will truly understand what's been going on in recent time and the implications it can have on the Dylan Rounds case. Quite serious, to be honest. So make sure to check that video out. We don't need to check the comments today of that video because there wasn't really many comments or questions. I believe one question, which the person might not see depending when they join into this video, was asking, what about Kenny Veach? When are you going to do a video about that? Well, I haven't got breaking news at the moment, so there's no need to do it yet because it's not really necessary, and the focus is on Dylan Rounds, got a good flow, good consistency, and as well to acknowledge the key people recently that I've been watching, as well as the regular people, as well, the likes of Graham, Org, SHT Show, She Show, and watcher of many things. Shout out to them for their presence last night, and it was a couple of other people in between too. It's good of them. I mean, like the way people have supported the channel or provided information and consistency and a good flow within the chat too, whatever it may be. It needs to be acknowledged, and it further reinforces why it's even more important and why it's worth covering this case, because it shows that people are still locked in. It shows that people are still focused and determined to try and make sense of it, such as all the people that shared their discussions, opinions, questions towards the Dylan Rounds case. When you're in the right direction, you might as well continue doing it. So yeah, but of course, any breaking news, Kenny Veach will be covered. So far, it's all under control for now, okay? I think what we can do though, just to continue on from last night's video, we continue on today with the recent discussions and newer updates. So we begin with that. Then we can move on to the Brenner situation, the living conditions, arrangements, whatever you call it. Then we talk about the GoFundMes and the money stuff in the background. Then we can talk about the Jim Terry situation and how it can be applied in general when it comes to the Dylan Rounds case, okay? So, as for weather, did a video last night. Weezer did leave a couple of comments and updates saying that for the rest of June, it's predicted to be raining almost non-stop. So that sounds pretty rough. She did say that around her area it has kind of dried up. It's not really flooded now, but I'm sure there'll be maybe some kind of flood damage in some places at least, maybe with some buildings, houses, maybe trailers too. But there is more rain to come and the ground is already kind of saturated. It's just going to fill back up again and possibly flood, back to back, which is rough. I don't know if Are people prepared in the area? Feel free to share your additional thoughts. Weezer, are people prepared? Are the sandbags out? Has been any developments for the future in that area to like prevent flooding or to ease it slightly? Let me know your thoughts if there have been any news or changes there. It's like one of those things, if you got a place which doesn't flood really that often at all, maybe less action will be taken. If you got a place where it just floods out of nowhere and it's very random, it's not expected because it doesn't happen that often, but there's no real pattern, then it's probably even less likely for action to be taken. Though, if you're in a certain area where it does flood kind of consistent and it's to be expected and predicted, then action should be taken. Flood prevention barriers, certain styles of buildings, houses where it might be raised off the ground on some kind of like platform stilts or so to prevent the water from getting into the buildings. Sandbags there all the time, just certain methods like that, maybe a few additional drains. Okay, so to be honest, the way I see things right now, if that is the case in areas like that, where it would just be Montello or not, I know Dale said that he wanted to go down to Saddle Sore Bar. Come on, Dale, since you're an expert and you've got a PhD in drainage and drains, I think you need to go down to Montello, Dale. I think you need to develop some new drainage system to prevent all this flooding. I'm sure you'll be rewarded by some of the locals, whatever you need or want. Okay, Dale? Make sure to do that. If Dale hasn't arrived yet, because I know he sometimes is late to the party, Graham ends up arriving first. Miss T, guidance, let Dale know about his new task. If Miss T isn't here, Watch Your Crazy, or what's the other one? Is it just Jen? Or Kim? Just let Dale know what he needs to do, and I'm sure it'll work out. Okay, but yeah, in all seriousness, if there's more rain to come over the course of June, that sounds pretty rough. If it's already flooded now with the flash flooding and the ground is still saturated, it's just going to flood even more. And from what Weezer has said and some others, that the washers, rivers are pretty filled up, and if they're filled up, then it can lead to a bit more erosion. We've seen the damage it can do on a greater scale back in 2017 when one of the dam broke on the Montello side. If something like that happened again within Lucin, that could be kind of bad, pretty bad. If that doesn't happen because it's already broken, if you just get a great flow of water, that'll be more than enough, right? And if it's long periods, it could wash away, the walls. As I said, there are positives and negatives. Positives, it could reveal Dylan's remains. Negatives, if not treated or dealt with quick enough, he could be washed away. So all that time spent previously ticking places off the list might need to be rechecked. Okay? That's what I'm thinking. And I think it doesn't always have to apply just to weather. It can apply to nature, wildlife. So everyone just focus very briefly, very quickly, okay? The way I see things, okay, Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds are saying about the ticking places off the list, whether it be Dylan's farm, the main line, the pond, the grain shed property, etc. But what if in one or two of those areas where Dylan may have been buried, he was removed, or more so relevant to, once people have been taken away like Brenner, if wildlife ended up digging up one of the spots where Dylan's at and then scattered his bones, remains further afar or in other areas, doesn't that make it a little bit tricky, complicated? It could do. What I'm thinking is, if for whatever reason Dylan was buried further afar, maybe not in a wash, but just further afar, and animals dug up his bones and then scattered him near to the pond or near to Dylan's farm, because those areas are already ticked off the list, Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds are probably less likely to go back to those areas because they've already checked them. But what if something or some animal returned these remains to those already checked places and then kind of like buried them, let's just say? Would Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds even know? They wouldn't, would they? Unless it was a clear clue. So you got to be on the lookout for that. If we're focusing more on the wash, if Candice Cooley has been searching there with the teams, resources, K9 units, recent or more so in the past, and they ticked certain locations off the list, what does it make a difference if with the recent flash flooding, could it reveal something, right? If they've been around the area and said, right, nothing to see here, there we go, let's move on and continue searching. And then flooding occurs now, which then disrupts possible evidence, which was buried, concealed. Does it now end up in those spots which were once searched and ticked off the list as nothing was found? What if something is found there right now? You know what I'm saying? As well, I've not seen any post or updates on like the Find Dylan Rounds Facebook page of people saying, oh, the flash flooding, it's preventing us from searching or going out there. But then again, maybe it'll come up in a future interview, okay? If like there's an upcoming interview on Doug's No Thanks channel, Candice Cooley might say, oh, we've been prevented from doing searches recently because of the rainfall, kind of like how she said about winter time in the past. We might see that again. And speaking of which, does anyone know in the chat? Anyone in the chat, have you heard any updates with No Thanks? Besides getting his channel, getting access back to his channel to be able to upload again despite receiving the odd strike or so in recent time, has anyone heard any upcoming updates to do with the interview with Candice Cooley? Anyone? Because I'm just trying to think now, when was it? I think it was like a couple of days after Dylan, was it? No, it wasn't that. Was it that long ago? It could be. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, when I think of it now. So if we look back to the anniversary of Dylan Rounds, right, which was back then now, it's what, like a month has passed or so since. A couple of days after Dylan Rounds' anniversary, the 1 year one, it followed with news articles, the odd interview taking place, and East Idaho News as well with Candice Cooley. And around that time, No Thanks also announced that is on his alt channel account, because the other one was receiving a strike at the time, but he was going to do an interview with Candice Cooley. And there was going to be 2 videos. The first video dropped, was released, uploaded, but it was more to do with Doug talking about the Rolling Stone article of Jim Terry and the East Idaho News channel update, going over that, just playing the video in its full length and talking about it. And then there was another post saying how shortly after this video, I'll actually be doing an interview with Candice Cooley. 1 month on, it didn't seem to ever happen, which is kind of odd. Unless I've missed it. Has anyone else seen it? Because I've not. Maybe there might have been delays in between. Candice, Justin have been busy with this recent event, the June 10th one, raising money, proceeds going to like the K9 units. Maybe they've been tied up there and there's not really been much time to do interviews in between. But I just want to know your thoughts. If you've heard anything, seen any updates, feel free to let me know in the chat or the comment section, okay? So yeah, as for the weather, more rain to come from the looks of it. Maybe more so in Montello, but I'm sure equally in Lucin, Utah, that area can be impacted as well. Has anyone got any updates with Ty Corbin? Ty Corbin's gone a little bit quiet, not really seeing much from him. No videos since. I think the last video he did upload was to do with the hat cap being found near that road near to Don's. No update since. And people in the chat have said they've not really heard anything. So what happens from there on? Does it just fade away because it didn't lead to a result? It should at least be acknowledged though in a video to say whether anything was found or not, just to clear up the mystery, right? No harm in doing that. I mean, I could be wrong, but I've not ever really heard of an update from that bra shed. You remember the bra shed? Now, I'm not talking about Dale's basement. I'm talking about in Lucin, Utah, right? The bra shed, which Lance Kelly came across, recorded inside, found all that clothing, underwear, etc. It was just abandoned there. Lance said he was reporting it into the police. Never really heard much of an update, follow up in like the short section or community tab. Maybe it could have been talked about in one of the longer live streams or long videos, but as for the titles of them, you wouldn't know they were talking about that, because most of the titles will be Dylan Rounds update, which is kind of vague. Search for Dylan Rounds, kind of vague. You know what I'm saying? You might miss things just simply because of the title. For at least when I try and do my videos, if I'm going to focus on something, one or two things, and even if it is long, I at least make sure that the title kind of summarizes it all. Yeah, there is times there where I can't fit it all in, but I do try and provide an additional subtitle, you want to call it that, in the comment section, because you know, the character limit, it's a bit restrictive at times, right? So I think what we can do now is, you know, talk about the Brenner situation, one of the main parts and talking points of this video. And I think it makes sense to just briefly transition onto the maps, so I can just talk you through it, and then we can also refer back to the weather scenario as well from last night's photo I shared with you, okay? So here are the map area. We just realize where we're looking. So we're currently facing south in the Lucin area, and that's for good reason. We zoom on down here, although yes, I did share with you a photo from last night when we're like kind of pairing it up with one another. This spot down here, remember that photo what we were looking at last night where it was flooded, the wash with the flash floods? This was the photo, this was the area where it was taken. In the background you got Lucin Hill here, right? You got the road, which, you know, the dirt one, which, you know, dips on down into the wash area. So if you were using that as a route to get through, you wouldn't really be able to when there's flooding. So that can divert you elsewhere. And then the pond obviously back here, which is slightly north, a bit further back. So you get an idea. So we do know that this wash, the main wash, the wash Candice Cooley has focused on with time, is flooded, right? Is it still flooded like right now? Well, I don't personally know, but if Weezer has said it's kind of cleared up where she's at, water's gone away, evaporated, drained off, whatever, maybe the same has happened here in Lucin, though it's going to be kind of wet, the ground squishy, saturated, and more rain coming in. You probably get the same happening again. And as well, as the water has or may have gone away now, with the walls being wet, you could say it's a little bit weakened in a way, softened. So then if you get another flow of water coming on down at a certain point, it could disrupt the sides. It could cause things to break away and maybe parts to become a bit unstable. You never know. So worth being on the lookout for that. Not really possible, but I think if you was able to have someone out here at the time of this flooding to observe the water level, the flow of it, and the direction, and to monitor if they can see anything bobbing in the water, any strange objects. I mean, you could think, how far down would that stuff travel? If Dylan was buried somewhere down here, or some other evidence, and it was unearthed, it was uncovered by the flow of the water, how far down will it go? You know what I'm saying? How far? All the way down here? My question is, once it gets down this way, you know where you can see it go in and out, the bends, and then it opens up more back that way. If we just rotate it so we're facing that northwest, kind of. Once it gets to this point here, it goes underneath the railroad tracks, right? And you can see like a little tunnel, can't you? Can I try and put a marker down? where that red marker is, just by the side of it on the left, you can see those two like tunnels which go underneath the railroad tracks. So anything back up the wash east, if disturbed, broke away, it could work its way down to this spot here with the flow of the water, such as Dillon Round's remains, additional evidence items. My question is to everyone watching right now, if it does work its way down here, is it going to go through the tunnel and pass out the other side here and carry on going up this way and all the way down here and on and on and on, Thousand Creek, in, out, back over this way, down here, Tacoma Valley, and going all the way up this way, in and out, and then across the border to Luray Wash, which I think is here. Is it going to do that? Is it Luray Wash? That's Date Reservoir. Apologies. Is that what's going to happen? That it's going to pass underneath those tunnels, underneath the railroad tracks, and just keep on going west? Or do you think it's going to get clogged up? You get what I'm saying? I mean, I can't remember what the voting polls were, whether it flooded from the 28th of May 2022 till the, June 11th, June 12th, 13th of 2023. Has it rained in between from back then till now? Because if it has and it's flooded, maybe items have already moved on all this time. You never know. But it just makes me think in general the possibilities of how things can be transferred, disrupted, the negative impacts of it, right? Just focus back in the wash. Where about is it? There. It makes me think, has anyone gone searching underneath the railroad tracks? Because it looks like you can go underneath it, where those like two black tunnels are. Has anyone actually walked through them? If it is possible. Or those two tunnels, do you get those like an iron gate or an iron fence, which allows water to pass on through onto the other side, but with those bars going down it, it prevents twigs, bushes from passing through? Anyone know? Because I've not really seen any photos or videos of this spot, and I've not really seen anyone exploring it or going underneath the railroad tracks. Maybe you can't, if it's like fenced off, if there's those gates, those iron bars going down, right? But then what that would make me think is, if after all the floods have taken place, right, whether it be the end of June, July, depending how much flooding and how much more takes place, one thing that might be key to do is, if you're searching for Dillon Rounds, is to go on down to the area to here, coordinates provided on screen right now, okay? So go on down here and look where that tunnel part is underneath the railroad tracks, because let's just say that there were bars going down, iron bars, which prevents certain objects from passing through. It could clog up a little bit, or it could just collect at that spot on screen. So if Dillon Rounds remains, full skeletal remains or something has come down the wash to this area here, then maybe it's in this spot, right? It could be here in the open, up against the gate, or collected with other debris. You never know. Just let me know your thoughts. As I said, the poll, we probably can do a poll right now. I don't know if it's a bit too late. Maybe I've activated it earlier. If not, we'll do it now. Poll can be, if during the flash flooding and remains being moved on, do you think this area on screen right now needs to be checked out, investigated, re-investigated? Let me know your thoughts. Make sure to vote right now. Now, if for whatever reason this wasn't the direction of water flow, then you just simply look the other way, right? So back up this way, which is more east. Where's the actual end point, though, of the wash up this way? It's hard to tell because it kind of opens up and it goes very brown here. Does it work its way all the way down here? Just by following the colour of it? Maybe not. No. Hard to tell, to be honest. But basically, if the flow was the other way, like here, then you just simply go up this way and follow it down, right? And you might see something washed up on the side, okay? Because the water has to go somewhere, and so will the items that are washed along. It could wash up on the sides, it could end clogged at the bottom of somewhere, you know, or it could just be dispersed out where the water goes, literally. So just wanted to use the map here. I probably should have used it yesterday, but didn't think on the time, on the spot. So that's why I've done it now. Okay? As said, we still focus on the map because of Brenner, his situation. So basically, Brenner at the time, before he was taken in by the police, he was living, but as Candice Cooley says, the news outlets, media, and I guess court documents state that Brenner was squatting about here. Okay? That's roughly where Brenner's trailer was at. That object there, which looks like a cube, is classified as like Brenner's shed, where he had his like some of his horse equipment, the saddles, I think maybe some hay, seeds, you know, bits and bobs like that, and a couple of buckets as well. Nearby to his trailer, he had a burn barrel, which looked like was used, but the police supposedly didn't find anything within the barrel or when emptying it out. So I don't know when it was last used to burn stuff. That's a little question you could ask yourself, maybe. And nearby as well, which doesn't show up on screen because it is outdated imagery, this was supposedly Ed Harshberger, however you say the name, like mobile home, which was allowed by Ed for Brenner to stay in. And that's what he did up to a certain point. And then for the rest of it, stayed in his own trailer. Okay. Now, a little bit of background stuff, if you want to hear about it. Over in Montello in the past, I think during 2019, I believe. Don't know if I can find can I find it on the spot? Might be a bit of a ask that. Give me a second. There we go. Back in Montello, in the past, when Brenner was staying here, his trailer, it did end up catching on fire and it did explode. It's supposedly accidental, but some have different ideas about it. But for that period of time, it appeared that Brenner stayed with Kurt Wadsworth for a bit because he didn't have a trailer himself, and eventually moved on from there into Lucin, right? It's been said by people that Ed Harshberger allowed him and I guess advised him and maybe assisted in him getting over here. Guess it was best for everyone. Get away from Montello, in which some of the Montello people probably didn't like Brenner because of the trouble he was causing, to get him away. But then someone like Ed to have someone monitoring the area, you know, like a caretaker, just to, I don't know, to care for the area. Maybe not exactly, but to just be like on the lookout and also live there in peace and nearer to his friend Don Hatley at the time that was living here too. So that's what quite a few people online think and feel, that Brenner was living here, he was allowed to, he was like even advised to, right? But Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds, the news articles we've read over time, news on YouTube have said and stated that Brenner was squatting on the land. And I've always used that word, squatting. I think that every single news article and every single news report which has referred to Brenner referred to him as a squatter and nothing else, which is very interesting. It's very consistent, that, right? Now, is it consistent for the right reasons or the wrong reasons? Are there people online that say that he was living there and was allowed to, are in the right or in the wrong? There seems to be a massive split and divide, right? Is it a major topic in the Dylan Rounds case? Not really, but it's probably one of the biggest divides, 50-50 type situations, okay? Now, maybe if I share with you some material, it could make a little bit more sense. I don't know, but there's only one way to find out. So we're going to look at some kind of like court documents or so. As for the relevancy of it, is it recent or from the past? I would say it's from the past. It does mention Brigham City, which is relevant to recent time, right? Because that's where that court hearing took place, June the 5th. But what was talked about in that hearing doesn't match to this court document. So maybe likely it dates back further, okay? But if anyone wants to fill in the blank spots or the provenance of it, time, date, then feel free to do so. As well, just want to acknowledge to you that maybe the text isn't so clear, okay? So some of you might find it a bit difficult to read, but don't worry, I'll read it out myself and you can listen if you want, okay? As for Watcher of Crazy, who has glasses all over the place, she's got lenses left, right, centre and higher up, so she will be able to read it very easily. One thing I did do though with the images or the odd bit of material was I increased the sharpness. By increasing the sharpness, it seems to show up clearer. So tried making it a bit easier to read. Let's head on over now and try and make sense of it. Here we are. So as I said, the text does look a bit dodgy. It is a bit small, but I will read it out. I can even zoom in as well. It might help magnify the cause, right? So before reading it, I think this is actually to do maybe with the search warrant or to do with at the time of the Brenner being in possession of firearms whilst being a felon, right? That type of stuff. But we just zoom on in and we just take it one by one. At the top it says the 1st District Court, Brigham City, County of Box Elder, State of Utah. So at the time when I saw it first and it said Brigham City, I thought it was to do with what recently happened because of that June 5th court hearing. Brenner was in Brigham City, Utah when it took place. But as said, what was talked about there wasn't really to do with that type of stuff, okay? More to do with attorneys being appointed, 2 of them or not, and the issues around it, as we've clearly seen, okay? Now below, State of Utah versus James A. Brenner, date of birth, 12th the 2nd, 1963. Arrestee, affidavit of probable cause. I think that's how you say the word. Make sure it's all in screen. Okay. So what do I have here? On the 6th, the 20th, 2022, at 17:55, the defendant was arrested for the offence of offence date, all occurring on the same day. 1 offence, possession of a dangerous weapon by restricted. 2, the same thing. And 3, the same thing. So Brenner was in possession of 3 dangerous firearms. Okay. Now what model firearms were they? Was one of which that 26 caliber rifle? I can't remember the exact number now, but one of those. And then the other 2 firearms, whatever models they were. Statute, whatever that says. Government Code, Utah. Severity, F2. DV, no. What does DV mean? I remember looking at the severity reading. I remember in the past when we actually took a look at, I think it was more of a report on Brenner to do with safety and precaution, and Is he deemed a threat to the general public, and under the crimes, the charges he's done, what it entails, and the conditions that can be met with certain outcomes, bail, no bail, all that type of stuff. So it reminded me of that. Anyway, let's read the true description behind all this. I believe there is probable cause to charge the defendant with these charges. Okay, so from the looks of this seems probably back in 2022, if I'm correct in saying, I'd say. This seems to be after June 18th, June 19th, 2022, because it's to do with the firearms charges, etc. Yeah. Let's read. On 6th the 20th, 2022, whilst out at Joe Cecchio's property, like the grain shed property. Joe Cecchio owned the grain shed property at the time. He no longer does now. Okay. It says located in the Lucin, Utah area. I, along with other law enforcement agents, interviewed a person of interest. During this interview, this individual stated that after Box Elder's initial interview with our suspect James Brenner, he came over to his home and asked if he would hold several firearms for him. This person of interest is Don Hatley. Don Hatley was the one to reach out to police, FBI agents and have that interview, which is mentioned here. Don is the one in which Brenner came on over to ask him to keep hold of these firearms and hide them because Brenner, he got in trouble in the past. So hopefully that makes sense to you and clicks. It says, when our person of interest asked James why he needed to hold on to his firearms, James stated for his own safety. Yep. And also so that he could hold onto those items in the future due to past experiences with law enforcement. They take everything. So he wanted to hold on to what possessions he did have. Okay. I guess Don Hatley surrendered those firearms in, like the .22 rifle, and grasped on Brenner because Don Hatley didn't want to be taken down or get into trouble, right? And if Don Hatley heard a confession from Brenner around that time, shortly afterwards, a few days later, maybe Don thought, maybe this isn't a good idea if I'm holding these firearms, and I also know what Brenner has done. I don't want it all to be tied to me. Maybe Don acts as a snake in the grass and, screws Brenner over that way, possibly. Let's continue reading. It says, our person of interest, Don Hatley, told James that he would hold them for the time being. When we asked our person of interest, Don, if he still had these firearms, he stated that he did. Our person of interest also stated that James was a felon and should not be in possession of any firearms anyways. A phone call was made to verify if James was in fact a restricted person, and it came back that James is a convicted felon and has multiple firearm-related charges, including possession by a restricted person, unlawful transport of firearms, use of antique firearm in a crime, an assault with intent to murder, and a malicious shooting. Okay, it's interesting how it's worded here. It actually seems much more serious and bad what Brenner has done previous compared to what we've read elsewhere. Okay, so to be honest, when I look back and think, what have I heard to do with Brenner? What's he got involved with? The trouble he's caused? Well, there was a time where his girlfriend, whoever that was back then, Brenner kind of was physical with, or kind of like threatened her in a way with a potential firearm. We heard back in the 80s, I think it was, when you had the Maryland shooting, which was kind of like treated as a fatal shooting and then reduced to a fatal, or no, was it a malicious wounding, but not murder. So kind of like the severity of charges back then was dropped because of his attorney at the time. We heard the odd few stories from the past by locals that Brenner did the odd shootout or fired warning shots to scare people away. If there was a bit of conflict, he might fire his gun or kind of point it towards someone, a threatening behaviour there. But the way it's worded here, I don't know, it just seems a little bit more serious. Anyone in the chat, feel free to tie events together with what's read here. I'll read it out one more time and just let me know your thoughts, okay? So, it says, came back that James Brenner is a convicted felon and has multiple firearm-related charges, include possession by a restricted person, unlawful transport of firearms. When was Brenner transporting firearms? When did that happen? A use of an antique firearm in a crime. Is that to do with Maryland? An assault with intent to murder. What assault? Are we talking about the assault back in Montello 2021? Aggravated assault on Bibbins? Or on a 69-year-old, another individual, I should say. Makes you think, doesn't it? What's your thoughts on that? And as well, and a malicious shooting. So out of those different crimes that have taken place, which one is linked to the Maryland shooting, which was a wounding in the leg? Which event ties with the assault with intent to murder? Are we talking about the 2021 assault in Montello where Brenner kicked someone and attacked a person with a lawn chair? And then what is the malicious shooting? What's that one? Right? There seems to be a couple here, which I'm not quite sure are linked with one another. Let's continue reading. So, it says, we asked our person of interest, Don Hatley, if we could see the firearms in his home, and he told us to come on over. So we went to 7000 S Pilot Mountain Road and went inside our person of interest home, and he showed us exactly where the 3 firearms were located. We documented the firearms and then ran them through the NCIC, and they all came back negative to anything stolen. Those 3 firearms were then taken as evidence, and we cleared from that residence and went back to James Brenner's residence, where on a previous occasion a search warrant was issued. During that warrant, gunpowder, ammunition, and blasting caps were found in James' home, and with this new information that James was in possession of 3 firearms, we decided to write another warrant for the residents to go in and collect the items that were left behind. Once the warrant was approved, I went back inside the trailer and found the powder and ammunition that was found on the previous search, and it matched the calibers to the 3 firearms we had taken as evidence. Knowing that James is a convicted felon and has been charged multiple times for the same offence of possession by a restricted person, and having a witness stay in the video, James personally came over to his home. Anything else here? I think that's like the same thing, just like more zoomed in. Okay. So at least this court document, right, take in mind that we've got bits and bobs of material here, so kind of working with on the spot. Maybe for once, possibly a slight miracle, if you want to call it that. This is all raw when looking at it, take in mind. It seems as if this one document, out of all the other stuff, doesn't mention specifically whether Brenner was squatting or not, right? Which I guess is a bit of a miracle, to be honest. So, does that tie in line with what people have been saying all this time online? Yeah, probably. I guess the only other interesting thing is if people weren't exactly aware of where Don Hatley was living at the time, his trailer, because people have never really provided coordinates. It says location is at 7000 S Pilot Mountain Road. Maybe type that in on the maps and follow it down. Possibly, it might show a bit clearer. But yeah, that's it for there. We do have one more. Here we go. So, that what you just saw there was another court-related document. It was like an extract from one of the documents, okay? I don't have the full piece at this moment in time, but I'm sure we probably went over it in the past on my channel, okay? This was just like passed on from the odd viewer just to highlight this whole theme of what we're talking about. So, it says here above, involves minor victim or controlled substance, firearm or destructive device. Right. C complaint. The defendant was squatting on property belonging to SH and RI. That is adjacent to DRDR. Was reporting missing on May 30th, 2022, and his whereabouts are unknown. The defendant is known to have had contact with Dylan Rounds and is a suspect in Dylan Rounds' disappearance. A search warrant was executed on the defendant's trailer, revealing black powder firearms equipment. DH was interviewed by FBI and admitted that the defendant asked him to hold black powder firearms and a .22 caliber rifle, Winchester. The defendant had delivered the rifles to DH and asked him to hold them for him. So this is still all to do with the likes of this like court document. Don't know if it happened on the same exact like court case, court day, but it all ties in with the same theme to with Brenner, unrelated charges at the time. Okay. So this one at least does mention in official court documents, and I do remember reading this because I did cover it on my channel. So if you want to see the full piece, go back to one of my earlier videos on the Dylan Rounds case when we did look at the different court documents, okay? So, anything to analyse here? Well, when it says the defendant was squatting on property, it means Brenner. Brenner classified as the defendant at the time. So it says, James Brenner was squatting on property. So, it seems to mention it here with 100% confidence. I want to know your thoughts about this in the poll. Do a poll right now. It can be this official court document alongside with what's been said by the media, Candice Cooley, who you might not listen to. But do you look up to this though? Do you believe this is the truth? Sure, you could say Candice Cooley, she might not know fully, but the news articles, outlets out there, media might just be listening to what Candice Cooley says and not the reality. Yeah, with authority, police executing their search warrants, going down to the area, doing like a background check too, the land, who it belongs to, who owns what. And then in the official court documents, it's saying that Brenner was squatting on property. What do you think? In the poll, do you think that this official court document is telling the truth or lying? You know, it should be getting it right, you'd think. I just feel that, could it be that legally speaking, or illegally speaking, Brenner was squatting, but there was a background agreement between Ed Harshberger, Barger, and Brenner, but officially it was never declared. So that's why legally it's classified as Brenner was illegally squatting. Could you look at it that way? Makes you think. I mean, at the end of the day, it could all be one big misunderstanding with this, right? But as I said, with the Dylan Rounds case, whatever it might be, we can tie up loose ends. That's exactly what will happen. So be sure to share your thoughts, opinions in the chat right now. Are you surprised by this on screen? Do you agree with it or disagree? If you do disagree, make sure to give a point explaining why. Maybe you can't fit it into the live chat. Maybe it's easier to read and follow in the comment section. Everyone, feel free to leave comments down below in this video. As well, feel free to like and share this video to spread awareness on the Dylan Rounds case and this whole current talk, right? Maybe the people out there might have a better answer or additional evidence to counter what's being said in this older official court document, right? So, anything else to mention here? Defendant equals Brenner was squatting on property. So they're saying that with 100% confidence and certainty. Brenner was squatting. And it says on property belonging to SHRI that is adjacent to Dylan Rounds. SH and RI. Now, I'm aware Skeptical did give the names out to these people under those initials, but because we don't talk about them that often, I do forget the actual names, okay? At the time, saying about Joe Cecchio owning the Grangeshed property, then eventually selling it on to a new owner, new person. Was there any other names? You had John Sheldon, to do with owning parcels of land or leasing it out, whichever one, right? See, this is what I mean. Things like this, because it's not talked about that often, or these characters don't get talked about much because they don't really apply really to the Dylan Rounds case. That's why the names end up being forgotten. But there's no harm in just bringing them back up in terms of the discussions. But though these people that, I guess, owned that property, they didn't live there, if I'm correct in saying. Candice Cooley has also said that there's a lot of land out there which can be owned by different people, but don't mean to say that they're living out there. They just own it but living elsewhere. Okay. Right, so for most of that, seems to check out. Missing on May 30th, 2022. Yep. Whereabouts are unknown. True. Suspect in Dylan's disappearance. No longer really a suspect because he's been officially charged with the first-degree murder. Was it aggravated murder? Dylan Rounds and the desecration too. What else did it say here? Search warrant was executed on the defendant's Brenner's trailer, revealing black powder firearms equipment. DH means Don Hatley was interviewed by FBI and admitted that the defendant asked him to hold the stuff. Yep. So when it talks about interviewed with FBI, that kind of ties back to what we see here on this one, where it says, I, along with other law enforcement agents, interviewed a person of interest. During this interview, this individual stated that after Box Elder's initial interview with our suspect, James Brenner, he came on over to his home and asked if he would hold it. So you can see how it links together. My question is, if anyone can answer it in chat. At the time, Brenner was seen as a suspect, but now he's been officially charged, right? Chase Venstra, in some way, was treated as a person of interest, but then his name eventually cleared down the line, and Candice Cooley saying that he was never a part of the investigation to begin with, passing on from what the police said, supposedly. Okay. But what about Don Hatley? Here, Don Hatley classified as a person of interest, right? What's he classified as now? Is he still classified as a person of interest? Or has he just been completely, his title, label, removed off of him? Does anyone know? In recent time, or so, when we looked at that conversation with what Justin shared, Candice Cooley referring to Don Hatley as a possible witness. Justin Rounds, though, more recently, and it does apply to the past, as feeling that Don Hatley plays a role in some way more as a possible suspect. So, where did the labels lie with Don Hatley officially? Is he still a person of interest or not anymore? Kurt Wadsworth, ever classified as a person of interest or not at all? You get what I'm saying? It'd just be good to know, right? Sure, the search for Dylan Rounds continues. Brenner, Weber County Jail or wherever he is now. But, you know, if there's characters out there, people that were once treated in the case, seen possibly suspicious, questioned, interviewed, where are they now and what are they classified as now? Candice Cooley has said in the past, she's not really mentioned it since, that none of us have really been truly interviewed or cleared. Our names haven't been cleared, so we're all kind of seen as suspects in the case. Sounds a bit weird, that, doesn't it? Does it still apply now? I don't know. So, just be sure to share your thoughts, okay, to what you think is going on here. Let me know after hearing that and reading the court document, did any of that make you re-question things? Did you notice anything odd, strange, that doesn't make sense now compared to how it may have sounded back then? Just let me know your thoughts. If there's anything outside of the box you picked up on when hearing and reading that maybe yourself, right? Because as we know, with this case, things can switch and change with time. What you heard back then may no longer apply now. So, does the debate continue to do with, squatting or not? Does that court document clear up everything now and say case closed? Brenner was officially squatting on the land, but maybe legally it was never declared between Ed Barger and Don Hatley at the time for being a caretaker out there. Is it the whole ownership of different parcels of land owned by different people within that small area? Is that what the conflict is, maybe? Like, that's one thing. When it comes to back in Montello, Nevada, right, when Brenner was on the outer skirts on that land, was that classified as his property? So it wasn't labelled as squatting there, but it's labelled as squatting at the grain shed property because it's owned by different parcels of landowners. Is that what the conflict is? Maybe internally there's some kind of agreement, but officially, publicly, it's not been announced or declared, so misunderstandings. So courts, documents label it a certain way, standard procedure, but informally, it's not like that. I just want to know your thoughts, okay? Just see if we can make more sense of it now than what we did back then, okay? In the meantime, though, whilst you may be still discussing it or trying to make sense, we need to move on to the next topic, next key talking point within this Dylan Rounds case, okay? So provide a bit of an update to do with the money raised on the 10th of June, just gone, which was to do with raising money, or partly to do with raising money proceeds, which went to like the K9 unit, people that have volunteered, that tried searching and helping and still are for Dylan Rounds, and maybe other people out there possibly aiding clean, right? I think was it Ron's something barbecue cook-off, which happened on the 10th, which also coincided with Candice Cooley Justin going down there to meet up with people, talk, hang out, as well as some of the K9 dogs, about 4 of them, going down and providing some form of basic training, information, so people could learn and be informed about it and what takes place and what goes into it and all that. Okay. As well, I think there was like raffles, people donating items and giving money in as well to assist in it all. Well, now we can check what the total amount of money was raised. If we go on over to the Find Dylan Rounds Facebook page, we can check it out and see what Candice Cooley has had to say, because I think it was posted about 18 hours ago. Let's head on over. So it was about 19 hours ago now, Candice Cooley showing it to Justice for Dylan Rounds. 2 photos there, K9TF, which is to do with the dogs, cadaver ones. Then on the left, Dylan's legacy badge emblem. And here we go down here, reshowing Ron's Tire and Motorsports, Point S, Idaho Falls. In honour of Dylan's legacy, we were able to raise nearly $11,000 for K9 Task Force. Dylan's family is graciously paying forward all of the fundraiser proceeds from our 5th annual Rib Cook-Off fundraiser to this amazing K9 unit. They have been a huge part of the search efforts to bring Dylan Rounds home. We hope and pray that that day is soon for this wonderful family. We are grateful to the Rounds and Cooley families for allowing us to hold this special event. Thank you, K9 Task Force, for your informative demonstrations and allowing us all to see a small part of your world this last Sunday. What you do for the families of missing loved ones is truly a priceless, beautiful gift. Many do not realise the amount of cost, training, love and patience it takes to keep an organisation like yours moving forwards. Thank you for teaching us and bringing awareness to your great cause. So, nearly $11,000 raised, and that's going to go towards the Canine Task Force because they do it voluntarily. So it's to, I guess, help them keep on going and keep on doing their thing as well. Now, the amount of money raised during that event for a very important cause, and I'm sure there's people behind it backing it, that's almost the same amount as money as what Salty Pancakes was asking for with his GoFundMe. And we'll be getting more into that later. Okay, so stick around for that. Let's just check the comments if available. So incredible. You and Justin Rounds have turned tragedy into something beautiful. Dylan's legacy will live on. I will say one thing. I still find it weird how previous you had that time where Candice Cooley said maybe it was the sense that Dylan Rounds was able to accomplish all that he did at a young age because he knew he was going to die at a young age. You remember that when it was worded that way? And someone else put a comment in as well which hinted at it too. And it's like, what? So Dylan Rounds knew he was going to get murdered. So why wasn't things done to prevent it then, if he supposedly knew? Certain lines and words like that kind of highlight a bit of red flags, in my opinion. Anything else we have here? Amazing. That's awesome. Thank you to everyone that's helped. Yeah. So amazing. Wonderful Canine Task Force, who was so deserving. I wish I lived closer so I could have come. Fair enough. Yeah, so it's all positive. Could say it's kind of a success. It did help spread awareness, maybe form new networks and connections and get Dylan's name out there too, as well as maybe other missing people, right? So yeah, nearly $11,000 raised. That should help the Canine Task Force in some way. Will there be future events? You never know. If Dylan Rounds' legacy is around for the long term, then I'm sure it could. Maybe for as long as they're trying to search for Dylan Rounds, I guess. So along this line and theme of raising money for a certain cause, let's look at some other, maybe in some people's mindsets, less desirable ones. And moving on, as you remember, I don't know how long ago it is now, maybe a couple of weeks, Salty Pancakes started a GoFundMe. We kind of had a look at it on my channel. It seemed like majority of the audience strongly believed that it was a scam, what Pancakes was doing. From the looks of it here, the money, the target, $10,000 to be able to afford a drone, the training behind it, the insurance behind it, additional equipment, bits and bobs and stuff like that. It appears that it has been a success. I mean, if there's any Salty Pancake viewers watching right now, or any Salty Pancake viewers lurking in the darkness, watching quietly in the background, if you could just give a brief confirmation or a very brief bit of acknowledgement, that would be appreciated. Did Salty Pancakes completely successfully get the $10,000, GoFundMe target? Was he able to reach the target? Yes or no? I know sometimes in the past, like when it came to Lance Kelly, there might have been a certain target to raise money within a week or within 30 days. So much was raised, but the target wasn't met, but the money was like withdrawn and carried on over into the next GoFundMe to try and raise that money. That's how it worked there. In this case, Salty Pancakes was able to successfully get a hold of a drone, which I think he listed, it cost about nearly $1,900, which is a fair bit, to be honest, in money. But what does that do? It leaves still a chunk of the GoFundMe money to be put elsewhere. So I guess the training aspects, the certification, the additional equipment, the insurance, and all of that, I would assume. Unless not all the money was raised, but enough was to be able to afford the drone to set things off. More of a guessing game here because the full context isn't provided. For as I said, if there is any Salty Pancake viewers watching or in the background, feel free to just give a brief confirmation to whether it was a complete success or only so much money was raised. Just so there isn't any misinformation, because I'm sure you wouldn't want that. Okay, so just list it in the comments or the live chat. It'd be helpful. Okay, so people watching right now, feel free to share your thoughts and opinions, reactions to this. The caption of this: the bird has landed. It's a DJI Mavic Tree Classic. So it appears to have a camera on board. Obvious. The bottom left photos, I think, is the controller to be able to operate it. And there is a screen as well, which will be linked on board to that camera on the drone. So it looks usable, right? But is it? I guess it's not a full spectral soil disturbance penetrating radar drone, right? Because that costs about $14,000 plus. It's higher grade, almost military type. But this type of drone will be useful, usable, practical when going out there, searching for maybe Aidan Clune or Dylan Rounds, and using it to scan, survey the area, and what else? Check for track marks from looking down at the ground, kind of like what Mob Crew Chris did in the early days of the Dylan Rounds case. And maybe just to scout the area ahead, possibly. So it will have its uses. Maybe this could also be used for some possible videography, if Pancakes does his own videos here and there, but I don't know if that would be the same on Rumble. Maybe not. Maybe Pancakes will go for more of the raw approach than the cinematic HD one, like what Heavy D does, right? I'd understand that. Just let me know your thoughts. Was it a good outcome, this, or a bad outcome? Can it be useful and beneficial towards other missing people out there? I heard that Kaylee did a GoFundMe as well recently. I think that was like nearly $10,000 that needed to be raised there as well. You put 2 and 2 together, that's almost like $20,000 raised like that. Just to put in perspective, right? You got Candice Cooley just in rounds with the Dylan Rounds case and that Ron's Tyre event, 10th of June, raising money there, people gathering, good cause, kind of popular, I guess, raising $10,000, nearly $11,000, just like that within a day or so. Then you got Pancakes here with his $10,000 GoFundMe, which may have reached the target. So you see within these different communities, you have these loyal supporters in some way, if that's the correct way of wording it, right? So even if Pancakes was seen as a bad individual or people didn't like him, it still shows that he's got his own community looking out for him, if you want to say it like that. What happens next? I don't know. I'm more focused on the Dylan Rounds case. Unless this ends up being used in the Dylan Rounds case, you never know. Just wanted to share this with you just simply because it follows the theme of raising money for something. We looked at Candice Cooley, we'll look at this. Just give little updates, there's no harm. Now, just get that thing off. We'll move on to the next one. Kind of follows a little pattern. I don't know if Bob was being serious, but it don't matter. We'll just read it anyway. Bob Farrell, 3 hours ago, well, it'll be longer now, saying, "Man, these GoFundMe things work so well, don't they? And the wish list that people have are great." Bob's referring to Amazon wish list there. "I want to start one up for me. I've never owned a house. I want a house or mobile home. These two funds seem to work out very well for many people. I'm going to sign up. And why do people keep saying that I am rich? Man, far from it, believe me. If I was rich, I would have a house somewhere and not living in a senior housing apartment. Living sucks. People always looking in the windows, listening to my phone calls. Unreal way to live. I want to move to my favourite place, Las Vegas. A house or mobile home would be just nice. I think the reason why maybe some people assumed that you were rich was maybe because of you doing the slots, playing the slot machines and all of that. I know Bob Farrell did clear one thing up, saying when he signed up or something, he put $200 in, but he also got given $200 in credit when signing up, so it amounted to $400 in the balance. He was clearing that up, and then some of the bits and bobs in between, right? And I know some people were talking about, does Bob Farrell need a new pair of socks or something? I can't remember what the outcome of that was, but nevertheless, thing is, I think when it comes to Amazon wish list, you probably won't be gifted a house on there, from at least what I can remember. Maybe it's different to other countries, but when it comes to Amazon, not the Amazon rainforest, but Amazon where you can buy products from, when you look at people's wish list, well, if you ever, sounds a bit weird that, but if you ever do look at people's wish list, it could be, well, it tends to be a new laptop, an Apple MacBook, a high-end Canon $900 camera, Christmas presents for kids or something. Well, if the person with the wish list has kids. Sorry, it just sounds a bit weird that out of context. Oh no. Apologies about that. For maintaining focus for so often to end up losing that flow all of a sudden is kind of disruptive. Anyway, you get the idea. There seems to be a pattern. When it comes to explorers, urban explorers, they'll have in their wish list a tent, sleeping bag, bits of equipment, pots, cutlery, a scooter, an electric one, maybe a laptop, high-end camera, high-end mic, several different scooters, several different other laptops, and like thousands, $5,000 worth, if not more. Does it really work out? I don't know. I personally don't know. I think the pattern has followed in the Dylan Rounds case. You got numerous different characters, maybe lesser known channels, but known in the community that have Amazon wish list. Okay, so it looks like Bob Farrell wants to follow in that direction. Do you say Amazon wish list is an alternative to Super Chats? I don't know, to be honest. I would say Amazon, I'll just give you my personal opinion, okay? When it comes to Amazon wish list, I don't know, it just seems, I don't know, it feels a bit awkward. And as well, I just don't see the practicalness of it in a way, right? I don't know. Does it seem more like a charity? Or is it... I personally don't know how it works. I know people could buy something as a gift for someone. I've heard that. But can it only be one person or multiple? Can multiple people pay towards the cost of something? Or does it have to be one individual that checks out and then purchases an item for someone? Not quite sure how it works. What would Bob Farrell want? Bob Farrell, for whatever random reason, if you're here, Bob, Farrell in a barrel, or if you leave a comment down below, what type of Amazon wish list would you have? What type of items? If it was a house, I don't think you can buy someone a house on Amazon. A trailer, possibly. I think you might be able to. Anyone in the chat right now, what's your Amazon wish list? We're not going to even get to Watch of Crazy. Her wish list. Get in trouble with YouTube. Oh. I think Watcher of Crazy wants some knee protectors, okay? So they don't get sunburnt and so on. What type of protectors do you want, Watcher of Crazy? You want like a... you want like a warlike Raph imprinted face one? So the face is always glued onto you. Oh no. Oh no. Do you know what? I'm glad we're talking about this now towards the end instead of earlier on, because probably wouldn't be able to focus with obviously the serious stuff. So yeah, Watch Her Crazy, her Amazon wish list consist of Warlike Raph knee protectors. I think she needed a new printer. An extra pair 24-carat diamond encrusted glasses. I think, what else did she want? She wanted a backup lawnmower just so we didn't have to go through another ritual of having to fix the current one. I think, I don't know, I'm sure Watcher of Crazy, I'm a bit speechless at the moment, but Watcher of Crazy, you can come in and save the day and explain to everyone what's in your Amazon wish list, okay? Betty Hayward knows exactly what she wants. And just to reconfirm so people aren't confused, Betty Hayward's Amazon wish list consists of a brand new John Deere tractor. She also wants 10 more different animal style bags. She wants some owl feathered wings to put on her too. She is also looking into a industrial bush cutter. So if you're out in the jungle and you get a bit tangled, you can cut your way out and then Betty Hayward can breathe once again. I heard Miss T last night said she was busy. She was in the bushes for most part of the live premiere. Well, don't worry, Miss T. When Betty Hayward gets her industrial bush cutter, I'm sure you can borrow it, right? So I think that's perfectly fine. Betty Hayward wants on her Amazon wishlist some new seeds to grow some exotic fruit, try other things and experiment. I think Betty Hayward said she wanted some black leather mask as well. Don't know where we're going with that, but I'm sure Betty Hayward knows what the plan is. So if anyone wants to donate to Betty Hayward's Amazon wish list for a black leather mask, and I think it had some spikes on it as well, feel free to head on over. Okay? Miss T, you went to Miss T's Amazon wish list. Even Amazon would reject Miss T's demands because she's too busy with Goodwills. Amazon is jealous of Miss T's shopping choices. I guess it is what it is. There we go. Tainted Ink wanted some different shaded colour bingo balls. Fully understandable. Has she reached the shade of grey yet? I think she's surpassed it. Okay. Maria. I think Maria's Amazon wish list. Watch list. It sounds like the FBI. Oh, sorry, Maria. I think Maria's wish list consists of lots of catnip, a scratching post. Why does that my poll post? Shack Lady's Amazon wish list. I don't know, I think I saw a lot of turkeys on there. Anyway, anything else to get from here? People's looking in the window. So, Bob, when you're doing your videos or when you're doing your live streams, are your neighbours like listening in, watching you? Bob, do you have like curtains on your windows or is it like fully exposed? Because like if you're in a situation where you got to change or you're going to bed, are people like stood there with the cameras taking photos of you if like you bent over or something? Because that would be a bit impractical, right? If you do get curtains, maybe that could help you in some way. As for the walls, the thin walls, so that's how people can listen in. Do you think, Bob, that people are using like empty glasses and putting them up against the wall and using their ears to listen in? Do you feel that Bob Farrell, that maybe if you've received any resistance, is it because of neighbours nearby who might be spying on you? Feel free to share your thoughts and observations down below, and we'll see. Anything else going on here? Not really. I think we should move on now to the next thing, which kind of ties in a little bit with Jim Terry. Right, so moving on, this kind of ties in with Jim Terry, with the discussions going on in the background. As well, it ties in with one of my observations in general to do with the whole psychological assessment of individuals, how at times it can be genuine and truthful and accurate, and then other times it can be done in a certain way to, defend oneself against resistance, to reduce resistance. More about that later, but let's just see what's going on here. So yes, we do have sketchy AF. Now, my question is sketchy AF. Sketchy, do you wear Skechers? Sketcher shoes. Let's clear that up first of all. Skechers. You wearing them, man? Oh no. The next thing is, over time, a lot of people have questioned and wondered, who is sketchy? Who could it be? And a lot of people have come forth with ideas and conspiracies and stuff and so on. People have tried thinking so hard till the cows come soggy, delivering some pancakes. Okay? Hopefully they didn't step in any. Maybe those pancakes were never pancakes to begin with and simply cow pats. You never know. Anything is possible. But one thing I would say, when I look at Sketchy's profile picture, yeah, you can wink and you can look all you want, Sketchy, with your googly eyes, man. I can see you in the profile picture trying to keep your eyes still, but it's not working. I got extensive experience with Betty Haywood's eye movement. I can see it from a mile away, and if I can do that, man, I can do it with the same with you, Sketchy. My God! The way I see it, that profile picture, a person, detective, in a big hat, overcoat, those eyes looks like an owl. Has the owl returned? Is there more than one owl? It looks as if this one does not give a hoot, just like that background channel art. Very fitting. Good. Anyway, you get an idea of Sketchy. Here are his videos and stuff. All kinds of stuff, I guess, more so to do with focused with Jim Terry. I don't know how far it goes back. 4 months ago. A little bit on Tyler Fella. Where did the train go? Polar Express, I think. Mr. Weiner. I guess that's to do with Mr. X. Arguably, regarding that term, I was the catalyst and architect behind the term Mr. X, known as Mr. Weiner. But as for everything else, Sketchy AF has constructed himself with his video edits. From the looks of it, seems a fair few people with time get on well with this channel and find it in a fun way. I guess one way of looking at it would be a bit of lightheartedness within the darkness to some people, maybe with Sketchy to raise a bit of awareness as to who is who and the reality of things, and maybe to clear up possible lies or mistakes made by others. The thing is, could vary, right? Motives and ideas. We're not going too deep there. I just wanted to give you a brief introduction to Sketchy, right? I think that besides me being labelled as a crisis actor and a wig enthusiast, I was also applied and linked to Easy Now 90. Do you remember that? I don't know if you're aware of that Grateful Nomad. I remember you popped in way back in the past for the very first time, and Easy Now 90 was there too. And then after that, Grateful Nomad, I guess, went on elsewhere. But maybe some months ago, Salty Pancakes thought I was Easy Now 90 because supposedly UK links playing FIFA 23, a football game. But as Salty Pancakes would say, FIFA. What's that, mate? Trying to sound like Lincoln Kine? Crikey, I'll do a video on that myself. But yeah, now that one where it's got Jim Terry wearing a wig, why does that look like Annie Frank? Ooh. Odd. So, a Ranger Distillery. Is that Bob Farrell? Bob Farrell, you are a disgrace. That's what it says on the title there. Right. I've not seen it. I guess it's got something to do with Bob Farrell being in association with Jim Tay, Mr. X. That transition phase, maybe. So I just had to transition on over to the comment section. I thought it was in the community tab, but it's in the comments of one of the recent videos to do with something along the lines of, why is Jim Terry so fragile? I'm not playing the video because of copyright, and if people want to really check videos out, you can go on to Sketchy's channel. But I just wanted to see the comments because of what people were supposedly saying to see what it's all about. CDC, never heard of this person. Always impressed when a narcissist can actually recognise who they are and work hard to change behaviours that don't come natural to them. Once again, nicely done. Is this person calling Sketchy a narcissist or Jim Terry? I don't know. Anyway, move on. Polish girl in Vegas. Now, I got mixed up with someone in the past. Someone in Vegas, the username. I believe it was Freddy Krueger. Not the actual Freddy Krueger, but person's username who associated themselves with Vegas. So I've finally cleared that up in my mind. I know what's going on now. This person, though, I don't think crossed paths with on my channel, but what did they say? I really appreciate your empathy. The problem with narcissists is that they are hurting inside. They don't love themselves. They feel unworthy of love and they hurt other people. It always makes me conflicted because they deserve pity, yet they leave such a path of destruction and nobody can fix them if they don't even acknowledge they have a problem. It must be hell to be them. But also that cannot be an excuse for all the hurt they cause, like having a horrible childhood. No excuse for killers in court. Something went wrong with Jim Terry and Mark Terry. Genes, family life, or a combination of both. It's really sad because any normal human being can sense how unhappy they both are. Somewhere, somehow, when they were growing up, being a horrible human being was rewarded. Is it too late for them? I don't know. So we seem to be going into a bit of a psychological backstory behind all of this, right? Does it apply to the Dylan Rounds case? Kind of, because this is where certain people originated from or made their presence known and where people have gathered ever since. And some of these individuals have been tied in with the making sense of the Dylan Rounds case, such as Jim Terry, even though maybe things didn't work out, but he did involve himself at the start at least. So, as I said, there are still links here and there. What are the theories, ideas? My theory, Jim's always had ADHD when something happened to him when he was of a younger age that scarred him, stunted his mental age and caused narcissism. Since then, he has bullied his little brother and his family. His brother comes off as someone who has been, okay. I do feel for people who have bipolar, BPD, narcissism, etc., but it's certainly not a license to treat others poorly. So whilst these psychological assessments can take place in theorizing and trying to understand why people behave a certain way, just like how I did with Brenner, right, within the Dylan Rounds case, let's not slant too one-sided. I think people have said the same thing about salty pancakes. Not from what I said, but from what other people have said in the chat, and they've been kind of full on at times, saying that salty pancakes is schizophrenic, has some kind of bipolar disorder, had some kind of bad experience in prison, dropping the soap, and then that led to a different change in behaviour and fantasies about wigs and bits and bobs being shoved elsewhere. Yeah, that's what other people have said, but, you know, we're seeing a general pattern of looking back, trying to understand why supposedly bad people are doing bad things. And it's on this theme and topic here, okay? You know a lot about NPD. It's often caused by rejection by at least one parent in early stages of development. Rejection meaning lack of love. If you don't get love as a child, how can you know how to give it? I feel sorry for Mark. He said many times he stepped up to protect Jim. Gay man whose brother hates gay people. Maybe this was the opportunity to finally get Jim's attention and approval that he's been seeking. So, I don't know what pathway we're going down, but there seems to be a bit of a backstory to it. Of course, in the chat right now, you can share your thoughts and reactions, no matter who you pledge allegiance to or just simply watch, just feel free to share your thoughts. Do you agree with any of this? Is it true? Or do you think it's a load of BS? Why not? Take in mind that most of this is like theorizing and not 100% for definite. So you can't call out the people literally, but if you disagree or if you do have a counterpoint relevant, feel free to list it. What else do we have? Sketchy, appreciate your videos. This explains a lot about the situation. We got Red Rose. As we've seen, we've come across Red Rose recently and in the past. Bravo, you did it. I prefer the expert. I shown you who's an expert in every spectrum of narcissism over Dr. Grande myself. Years of studies in personality disorders, psychology, and horrific relationships with one, the other, my neighbour, infatuated with me and almost killed me once. He knew I had him figured out inside and out. I have really good radar for these type of people. Glad you were able to share the guy you told me about, Narcissism 101. The only thing that I'll say about Red Rose is she seems to have it figured out. She knows exactly what she's doing. She's one step ahead of people. But when it comes to reasoning ability, Red Rose is severely lacking. Like how I said with my coverage of the Dylan Rounds case, Red Rose was calling me out for deconstructing and analysing Justin Round's recent behaviour, saying it shouldn't be done, you shouldn't be doing this or doing that. But at the same time, Red Rose started calling out Candice Cooley and labelling her different types of things, a control freak, etc., and telling her to F off as well. As said with me, I'll question Justin Rounds. Maybe people won't like that. But I'll balance it out by questioning Candice Cooley and additional characters down the line, okay? So I think ultimately, you want to call it the YouTube streets, if you want to call it the red light district, if you want to call it the Dylan Rounds community, the true crime community, I think there is a ladder effect. A ladder effect of possible awareness, a ladder effect of what one person has analysed within humans and how they can see things, right? Not everyone is at the same level, I guess. But maybe in this comment section, everyone or most are on the same level in terms of like a consensus, how they have an outlook towards certain characters in this case. Exposing JT and MT are the worst narcissist I've ever seen in my life. Now, I personally don't know who this person is. I've not crossed paths with them. I think some people were saying something like it's Salty Pancake's wife or something. No clue. We've got watcher of crazy, watcher of channels, watcher of watches, watcher of AA meetings, watcher of empty bottles, watcher of free glasses elsewhere and everywhere, watcher of auctioneers, watcher of storage hunters, watcher of greenhouses, watcher of nature, watcher of hats. Endless list, okay? What does watcher say? He's a grade A narcissist, lying, cheating, stealing, POS. I won't say that word because YouTube will get me done probably. I believe he did everything that the mothers of the missing kids said he did to them. Ashley, Candice Howard, Candice Cooley, and even Amy. I apologise for supporting that BS and for what he has put you all through. So it seems like we've got a transition stage in which humans at different times who are associated with maybe darkness eventually realised or supposedly realised the supposed reality and then moved away from it. So maybe that ties in with the refugee type crisis where people realise war-torn country, war-torn environment, it's got a bad name, don't want to be associated with it, want to try and branch away from it to get away and to start again elsewhere. That can apply on YouTube, right? But at times, I guess, out there, people may not always be as welcoming. Let's just see the responses. 18, that's quite a lot. Hun, I truly hope, after so long, fully supporting all the bullying, exploiting, using the handicapped disabled for content, and in reality, never truly care about anyone but themselves. JT, MT. MT means Miss T. SP means salty pancakes and their minions. Plus so long knowingly supporting all that shit and me, myself and I bullshit Not everyone is able to recognize a narcissist, histrionic sociopath as easily as others because normal people don't think like they do. But for me, knowing all of you who followed for a year of witnessing Jim's reality is a hell of a long time to not see and hear it right in front of you. Appreciate your comment. I'm not looking for friends or approval, just the neeps. I'm just sick and tired of the BS. I apologise to the mothers because I owed them that much period. That's why my heart spoke to me to do so. Okay. JT really showed his true colours when he couldn't even sweet talk the nurse at Michelle's facility. What the hell? I won't celebrate too much because most of us were here, there. However, I wanted you to personally, I sincerely appreciate it. Okay. Oh, so it goes on and on and on. Whatever that is. This person here, oh yeah, a long time ago, did a narcissist test for Jim. He was a major narcissist. This is Dr. Grande. I present him on a lot of my live streams about narcissism. Legion of Doomski still needing a clean pair of clean sheets from what he said on my comment section. You need to go clip the LC show where Marky just went on and told everyone he loves swallowing. Right. Star, I believe Star, correct me if I'm wrong, is that Star Jasmine? Just with a different username from now on. Star Jasmine had an issue with me in the past, whinging and whining. I don't know if this is the same person or not. American Honey is fine. Quiet on my channel, but understandable. You know, if you've got different audience of people coming on in, different shifts, it might feel a bit suffocating or one-sided. So American Honey, I guess, doesn't feel the need for that to be exposed to it, maybe. But just in general, American Honey doesn't really cause any issues, at least from what I've seen. Okay, so that's fine. Was there anything else we need to take a look at? I don't think so. So all in all, when looking at the comment section there, and maybe if you look at other videos too, you will see some familiar names. Now, although I might have not crossed paths with the majority of them, you may have well done, right? The reality is, and I'll give you the reality right now, could it cause resistance? Maybe. Is it the end of the world? No, it's mainly under control. Reality is, like the Earth, islands connecting together once in the past. As time went on, some parted ways, some split and separated, and they are how they are now. So, when it comes to the early days of the Dylan Rounds case and community, a lot of people all together, listening, joining in with one another. Then there was a split, became fractured, became fragmented. People took their sides, picking and choosing, like our Buster Bratimus said, who once had an issue with me for no true reason, recently said, I can't keep up with who's on what side, who is in allegiance to one another. Reality is it's almost like the conquest of Rome. It's like going through the wooded areas and then the barbarians coming on in with their haystacks on fire and throwing them down to cause disruption and to disperse the divisions of the Roman army. So do they get into their toy-toys, position? Depends, I don't know. But as I said from day one, or how I visualize in my mind and how I said it out in my videos, because majority of the stuff I've said, I've predicted and it's happened, both in the Dylan Rounds case and the community, and still ongoing now, a 99% accuracy rating, just being realistic, okay? So I'm in my mindset, and I came up with key terms, as some of you will know. Many people might not quite understand them, but the odd few do know, so that's good. People are in line now. But what I thought was, if you got different allegiances being pledged and then relations breaking down, back forth, just like in the Dylan Rounds case, just like with the information and evidence, it's the same. So when people talk about drama, petty, or it's not needed, or, put that aside, what about the case itself? What about the internal part of it? What's happening here, disagreements, falling outs, is what's happening within the case, like between Justin and Candice Cooley, like how we saw in recent time or so, right? Kind of mirrored. When people talk about things switching and changing, allegiances being pledged and moving elsewhere afterwards, it's like what's going on within the case internally, the evidence and information switching and changing, back forth, hard to keep up with. There's a lot of mirroring, okay? Now, as for, I guess, the current situation, for, I don't know how long it's been going on for now, you might start seeing a few different people aligning with one another. Oil and water, but for some reason, now it's finally mixed in some way. What's that one ingredient? What's that one, factor which has allowed it to all come into play? Some kind of consensus, some kind of agreement, right? At times when people dislike one another, if there is some kind of common ground to be formed, that's how people can get together, okay? It happened to an extent in the past, temporary, if you remember. I mean, it was between the Jim Terry pancakes scenario and there was some kind of common ground between one or the other, or some audience members, how they had an outlook on one or the other. Short term, didn't last long. It was interesting though how back then there was a point where Jim Terry and Salty Pancakes for a couple of hours in one of the days were saying how they were going to work together on the next missing person case and assist one another. Yeah, that really went down well, didn't it? But as for recent time, as you saw with the comments, the common consensus is, from the looks of it, more people now arguably than back then are in line with one another with their dissatisfaction, disagreements towards Jim Terry and Mr. X, that these people that have got together that once disliked one another or didn't get on well are now thinking aligned because they have a common enemy, right? Them. Some of those people there that see another as an enemy they were once aligned with, right? As I said, deep-rooted entanglement. You get supporters who support someone, then down the line, those supporters end up disliking that one. Then you get supporters from here, supporters from there who dislike one another, but because they now suddenly equally dislike another out there, then they connect together. Short term, long term, guess it depends how long that individual is around for and whatever they do and say. Is there a problem with that? Is there a problem with reaching a common ground and enemies ending up forming alliances together, like in the movies? It's very fragile. If people once hated one another or disliked one another and now they're in allegiance to fight a bigger cause, at times, yes, maybe it can strengthen a bond between people, but then other times, because it's already fragmented and fractured, almost on thin ice at times, and it depends what happens down the line. Some like different chapters, it's almost like a movie, some kind of book, right? How these different groups are taking place. Is it like turning into the Game of Thrones or something? Because that's how it feels like, in a sense. Maybe without the dodgy stuff, but then again, well, I don't know. Yeah, you know what I mean? Very, very loose. Just like the way I'm talking right now, it's very loose and kind of unstable. Sure, people are in line with one another now, but are they going to be down the line? Maybe not. And, you'll get different sets of people. One set of people will be the hardliners, the die-hard fans that could be considered a little bit delusional, but, as a positive towards them, loyal to whoever they're looking up to, but maybe a bit robotic at the same time, right? They're the ones that will be there till the end, till the downfall completely, till it implodes on itself. But along the way, the majority may end up chipping away, walking away with time and going elsewhere. And they might even change their attitude or behaviour. It might all come as a result because they've finally awoken to the truth, the supposed truth, supposedly, right? Is it like the ISIS bride situation? Yes. It's like the ISIS bride situation where people in 2014 went down to Syria to get with ISIS fighters, who are classified as the bad ones, the evil ones, the darkness. And once it's imploded on itself, or the truth has finally come out, or they've been defeated, the ISIS brides want to run away and go back to wherever they came from. Some might want to genuinely change, others are being genuine and were just simply brainwashed, and that's why they went there in the first place. But in terms of the response by people from other countries, they're probably not going to be as forgiving or lenient, and it is understandable in a way. Can that apply here in the Dylan Rounds community YouTube streets? Yes, it can, in a way, right? As for the hybrid people, different scenario. The hybrid individuals that may watch a channel that is deemed as dark, evil, but also watches a range of other channels, it kind of balances it out, light and dark. So a bit more depth behind it. There's maybe a bit more understanding to infer from it. And that can apply to a couple of people probably watching here, right? If they are hybrids, okay? Now, moving on to the psychological aspect that was the main talking point here. Maybe they are people back there with backstories, with a psychological explanation to explain why their behaviour is the way it is. Primary, secondary forms of socialisation, primary, secondary caregivers, environment they've been around, how it's been constructed, how it impacts their behaviour, whatever. In general, though, psychological warfare may have well been used in the Dylan Rounds case and community to get a certain outcome, a certain direction, in the form of manipulation. As we said, Bob Farrell, the art of manipulation, how people can be dragged into it, people can be treated as a pawn on a chessboard. It can happen, okay? You got the awareness and alertness, you can prevent it from happening. There'll be some out there that might be a little bit more clever and go along with it without fully demonstrating internalization. They just show a form of compliance for the best outcome, both with them and the resistance or the dark forces they're associated with. And maybe once the time is right down the line, they can finally break free and go wherever they need to and do what they need to do, right? But all I would say is I can understand why some people out there would be still a little bit cautious. Whilst it's okay for people to all get together now, huggy, let's all look for the same cause and reason. You understand that some people will be very cautious and wary out there, that if people differ from a dark force, that they could have been injected with some of that darkness themselves, right? Because sometimes people will align themselves with others because they kind of associate with one another, right? See, we're going down a bit of an alternative dark path here, but sometimes it's okay to be calling someone a narcissist or a psychopath or this or that, but were you once a part of it? Now, it can branch two ways. Let's make that clear. Maybe subconsciously people will align themselves with others because they share similar personality traits, and that could be of levels of darkness in a negative light. Then the others just simply align themselves watching another channel just simply because they like the humour, they like the structure of the show, the live streams, they like the humour, the lightheartedness at the time before it went a bit too heavy and full. When it started becoming a bit too heavy and full, that's when they realised and thought, I don't really want to be a part of this anymore, and then break away. So there's different tiers, there's different levels, ladder effect, just like the hierarchical structure of these different channels and how they are established from the foundations all the way up, okay? Different architects behind it, different personality traits, behavior, could associate, could align with certain followers as well, but not always, okay? Now, the reality is, sometimes the use of psychological assessments, whether it's 100% true or not, can be used as a form of psychological warfare in itself when dealing with resistance. Now, in terms of my mindset, reality is, when I come across humans, not all, but some, or maybe most, humans upon this earth, the way they behave, the way they act, I've analysed humans for over 9 years plus and counting. I've seen patterns, I've seen structure to them, their tone of voice, their behaviour, body language, whatever. And the good thing is with me, I've been able to apply it within cases, within mysteries. Do I need this? Do I need that? Do I need a big gold sticker upon me to say that I know this and I know that? No, you can do it naturally. You can do it with time. And to be honest, people can randomly say, well, are you even in a position? People say, am I in a position to be analysing someone or to be deconstructing this or that? My question is, why are people assuming that I'm a psychologist when I'm not? But some people actually think I am. Some people think I'm a doctor. Maybe it's just down to first-time impressions, how one presents themselves. You know, if independent people can come to a conclusion and assume that one is of this position or of this knowledge when they're not, you know, they must know something to have an effect on another to think that way in the first place. Very interesting, right? But no, just being very basic, just very basic. When you come across resistance, okay, whether that individual causing you trouble or not, has issues or not, if you try and turn it into like a psychological aspect, you can counter that resistance, whether it's a sign of care, understanding, trying to work out why that person is behaving the way they are. Why is their neural pathway corrupted? What's gone on inside? What needs rewiring? Has something bad happened in the past? Kind of like what we saw in the comment section on Sketchy AF's channel, right? That type of thing. And the reason why you can kind of counter the resistance with this psychological analysis, whether it's real or not, is because it kind of halts them. They're not expecting that type of response or review on themselves. They don't want to be analysed. It might make them feel, I don't know, uncomfortable. It might just annoy them. It might be annoying to hear that droning voice of a psychologist-style tone, maybe. But from at least humans I've come across, whingy whiners, delusional individuals, cocky people, some UK people, whatever, wherever, whenever. The moment one is treated as a patient, it all goes downhill from there. They're no longer an everyday human, they are a patient, and that doctor will see to them. You get what I'm saying? That's a form of how the psychological aspect can be applied to counter the resistance. When one is dealing with cancerous people, they need to be treated as a patient and nothing more. As simple as that. Okay? Now, when it comes to the Dylan Rounds case, can it be applied there? For the right reasons, most definitely when dealing with the Dylan Rounds case. Whether it be Dylan Rounds himself or more so Brenner, trying to understand what happened and why. There needs to be a serious approach there. When it comes to the more looser end things in the community, that form of psychological analysis can be a lot more casual, right? There's different variants of it for sure. People have analysed Dylan Rounds, people saying that he's got autism or he's on some kind of lower end spectrum. Whether it's true or not, my question towards the people that have analysed Dylan, what is the point? How does it link? Are people assuming that because Dylan has autism that led to him dying? It caused him to die? If anyone wants to fill in the blanks, feel free to do so. Like, I don't know if it applies here, to be honest, right? But in a general situation, if you looked at someone's personality, their behaviour, maybe they had maybe they may have had some kind of issue which led to them maybe responding at times in a rude way, but it wasn't like on purpose, it was just the way they are. Or a completely different case, if someone had, Tourette's tic, where they might swear repeatedly, not like men, but they can't help it. If you're around the wrong person at the wrong time with a certain condition like that, which makes you act out in a certain way, that other individual at the time probably won't understand or even know. And if they already are a bit of a dark, shady person, they could retaliate back. So if we was to apply it to Dylan Rounds' personality or a certain side to him made him act out in a way which could be considered rude, and because Brenner doesn't like being spoken to in certain ways, it aggravates him, just like Justin Rounds speaking to Brenner in the past 2020, I believe, maybe in August time, and Brenner said, I don't like the way your father's speaking to me. I'm going to kill him. That's what he said. That was the threat, right? So if Dylan Rounds spoke to Brenner in the wrong way on that day for whatever reason, that could have triggered, could have been one of the triggers for why Brenner snapped, right? But I don't know what Dylan is like truly or capable of in terms of behaviour, personality, which it could be interpreted the wrong way by the wrong person, right? As for Dylan having issues, I have no clue because I've not analysed him. And me personally, this time around, I'm not in a position to be fully analysing Dylan in that way, at least. And I don't really have valid material to work with, so I choose not to. Very self-explanatory, that. When it comes to Brenner, because we've got a bit more of a backstory behind him, I can look a bit further, right? There you go. The other thing is, obviously, when you do get psychologists, right, and you get students of psychology, some of it is down to interest. But other times, and people won't admit this because they'll show resistance or they'll show denial and self-defense mechanisms within their own neural pathways and brain, okay? You will get psychologists out there. You might get corrupt ones, okay? You might get a range of psychology students who are interested in the brain, interested in how it works and how it functions, to the point where they visualize it so much that they forget they're talking to a person and see the brain as just some kind of object to study. It's almost like looking past the eyes, the soul of an individual, and just looking at the brain. It goes a little bit numb in a way. You could say it's a bit psychotic in a way. It seems a bit ironic and complete change of scales, completely imbalanced, but it can happen. When I was studying psychology in the past on a lesser scale, okay, not university, college, lesser scale, the people that were around, some of them seemed to fantasize about serial killers. Were they of a certain gender? I think there was more of one gender than the other in the class, but I don't know, I think just people were a bit too focused on psychology, but visualizing it so much that the concentration was intense, looking past the person and just looking at the insides. And it's like, there is a person somewhere to look at as well. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Different levels, ladder effect of multiple different factors and causes. Very deep-rooted entanglement within the Dylan Rounds case, okay? But we've been able to pick away at certain elements, right? And predictions have been made upon that basis, and they have come true. Do I have a prediction right now? Well, all that I would say is this new age alignment, new age allegiances being pledged. Short term, long term, how does it go down the line? Slightly treading upon thin ice, I would say, if enemies of enemies are now together. It doesn't always work out. Depending how long the issue lasts, that's how long maybe that formation of allegiances last, the lifespan. What happens once the problem is dealt with completely and resolved? Do those people remain all together, happy? I think that maybe down the line people will branch away on neutral terms, possibly. But if there are any factors in between, or more so afterwards, which could relight the fire and kick off all the backstabbing again, that could definitely happen. But you start to see things being reformed, rebuilt in the process. Disposable humans from the looks of it, where, okay, certain community, a certain dark side builds, gathers people, then through disagreements down the line, the odd falling out, some people are kicked, ousted out, and they rebuild and pick a next person, such as Bob Farrell. How long does it last? Who knows? The outcome could be kind of rough. But yeah, if I was in a situation, if I wasn't balanced, and I was just like the odd other person, oh, I don't like you, let's all hold hands together now, wee, like that, I'd be on high alert regardless, right? It's like, at one point someone tried to assassinate you, and then eventually because of some other problem going out there, you ended up getting on well, or at least just putting up with each other to take out a bigger problem. What happens after that? Did they finish that job they initially intended? Possibly. Does that happen here? Maybe with some individuals. Maybe there is some kind of hit list. You never know. I guess time will tell. But in the meantime, we can still focus on Dylan rounds and cover what needs to be covered. If at any point I feel I reach a checkpoint and there are no more disruptions, I can maybe look at Kenny Veach, or I can do one of the outside the box videos. All kinds of stuff. Okay? So thanks for watching. Shout out to the people that were able to watch all the way through this and maybe understand it. Hopefully you found it interesting. Hopefully you took in mind possible place of interest that should be searched either now or down the line after the floods in Lucin, Utah, and go from there. If you have joined late, I do advise you to rewind back to the beginning, as we did look at some possible very important places of interest which coincide with the current flood situation in Lucin, Utah and Montello and the rain ahead. It could cause displacement, it could cause shifts in the ground, in the walls, which could reveal remains, evidence. Dylan could wash him downstream, and where does that collect? You have to follow it and check yourself. So down the line, possible places of interest. Make sure to rewind back, catch up, watch the previous video if you need to, and yeah, I think we'll leave it there for now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye and good night for now.